It's really good to see you again. Welcome to One Slot. I'm Felicity Ezewike. Africa seems to always be in crisis. This time, it's facing an escalating water crisis that is threatening economic collapse, exacerbating poverty, and endangering millions of lives. A UN-led Global Water Security 2023 assessment released during the UN 2023 Water Conference found that all African nations were water insecure, accounting for nearly half of the 114 such nations in the world. A more recent study released last month amplifies this. The 2024 State of Africa's Environment Report, jointly published by the Center for Science and Environment and Down to Earth magazine, further highlights the pressing crisis. According to the report, the continent's water availability per capita has declined by 70% since 1970. This seemingly contradicts what we hear as blessed with abundant natural resources when we talk about Africa. Well, it actually doesn't contradict it because the report's assessment, the key message is abundant natural water availability does not necessarily ensure water security. There is a warning also by Sunita Narin, Director General of Center for Science and Environment, CSE, to leaders on the continent to deal with the issues with more sense of urgency as climate change is further compounding the issues. To discuss the water crisis in Africa, the implications and likely resolutions is Senior Manager and the Species Pillar Lead at Nigeria Conservation Foundation, NCF, Dr. Stella Egbe. Doctor, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me, Felicity.
Okay, we'll be joined a little later by the National Coordinator, Society for Water and Sanitation, Attah Benson. As soon as we establish that contact, we'll welcome him to the conversation. Doctor, let's start with maybe an understanding of the drivers of Africa's water crisis and how these intersect to exacerbate the situation.
Right, thank you very much. So largely, Africa's water scarcity is both natural because we have some levels of aridity, but again, there are some research and reports that have classified this as economic scarcity. So this scarcity is due to mismanagement of the water resources that we have. We also have the overwhelming issue of climate change that is now undeniable. All of this interplay to now become an issue. And because water sustains life, it is the driver of everything we do, from agriculture to all forms of life, to the sustainability of basic life. So you see a situation where all of this interplay to now affect everything and every sphere of what we do. And it is affecting agriculture, livestock farming. Pollution is also a major player in Africa, where we have poor policies that do not help us regulate players in different industries. So we have a whole lot of factors that interplay to make the situation worse for the daily user.
We'll try and press you a little further for some of these issues and how we can make headway away from it. But let's talk about this seeming paradox in Congo. The abundant natural water available does not necessarily ensure water security. Maybe using the Congo situation.
Yes, so what you have in Congo is not different from what you have in some of the depressing areas of Africa. You're surrounded by this resource, but you cannot access the quality water. This is basically issues with mismanagement of water resources. And so you have issues of poor policy, poor management, and even lack of awareness by people. This is basically a man-made problem, and it can only be resolved and resolved by human intervention as well. And because water is a central resource, it has to be regulated intentionally by the government. And this is where we need to concentrate our efforts. People can do their bits here and there, but if you do not have centralized policies that help us regulate the use of water, that help us regulate the recycling of water, then these local actions would also interact and interface with the overall issues like climate issues. And Africa will continue to suffer scarcity even when it is surrounded by these resources.
All right, Doctor, let's pause a bit and welcome the National Coordinator, Society for Water and Sanitation, Attah Benson. Attah, thank you for giving us your time as well. I don't know if you listened a bit to Dr. Egbe speaking on, some of the issues when it comes to we have it in abundance, but we seem not to be able to use it for our own good. I just want to take up a few things you mentioned, poor policies and lack of awareness by the people. When we talk about policies, about, water management and utilization of our resources, what would be your submission?
Thank you very much. Good afternoon to everyone. Before we go talking about policies, we have to start first by talking about the commitment of the government to their citizens. How do these governments regard their citizens? Because water is supposed to be a human right. And unfortunately, in Africa, the African governments do not think the citizens have any right. So if the government feel the citizens do not have any rights, so how do they go ahead making plans for their well-being, for their survival, for their life and health? So it goes beyond policy, because first we must have government that are committed to the plight of the citizens. In Africa, we see what plays out in every African country. It's only one or two African countries, we may say, have concerns for their citizens, but all other African countries, particularly those ones that were colonized by one foreign power or the other, don't think they owe the citizens any duty or any obligation to provide anything for them, because without having proper plan for the citizens, before you go talking about policy, you must have first sit down to envisage what you need to do to improve the life and well-being of the citizens. So in a nutshell, we really have to say that the African governments do not have any concern for the citizens. So, and the same goes if a government that does not have any concern or any commitment to the plight of their citizens, all they do is just copy the content of one institution or one other country and put there, and just for the name of policy, and at the end of the day, they don't make use of such policy. They talk
Mr. Benson,
away. Yeah.
The whole conceptualization of this program is to talk to experts like you to suggest a way forward, even in the face of this lackadaisical attitude and commitment from government. We can still do something somehow. So while you mule that, let me go back to Dr. Egbe and just. While Mr. Benson was talking, I was thinking along the line of your submission on lack of awareness when it comes to better water resources management. But where is the place of infrastructure and requisite skill in managing our water resources?
I think in this particular area, it has to do with where you have a growing economy, and you have the introduction of infrastructure that is bringing economic dividends without a consideration for sustainability and the impact of such infrastructure on existing natural resources. And so this is where we need to now begin to work to strike a balance, that as we embrace economic interventions and innovations, we must balance it with sustainability. We must balance it with actions and activities that reduce the impact on existing resources and important resources like water that is essential for everyone. This is the crux of the matter for a lot of African countries. We want to grow. We are embracing foreign investment. We have people mining and doing all sort of exploitation of natural resources. But the impact of this on our immediate surrounding, the immediate resources, and what we're talking about today in terms for water is something that we need to be cautious about. What are the assessments? What are the predictions of these economic innovations that we're embracing? What are the steps that we need to take to reduce the impact on us? Because while we have these short-term benefits in terms of economy, what is the long-term impact on the people themselves? So these are the conversations, and I hope I am able to address the last question there.
Yeah, on requisite skills we need for it.
So the skills, I think that the skills are there. You have experts that are able to give you predictions. Where we have development, one of the requisites one of the requirements is that you have environmental impact assessments to tell you the impact of this development on the immediate resources and what you need to do to mitigate this. This expertise is there. But like I said earlier, if you have all of this knowledge, if you have all of this expertise, but you do not have the policy that engage and put this expertise to action, and then we don't have anything. You could have all of that expertise, but if you don't put it to use, then you have nothing.
Dr. Egbe, I'm going to come back to you. Hopefully we have enough time to address, creating the right policies. Mr. Benson doesn't seem to share your strong optimism that policy changes will make that much of an impact. I'll come back to you. Mr. Benson,
all right.
You just came on to this conversation, so I would like our viewers to get your perspective on the phrase that abundant natural water available does not necessarily ensure water security. Talk to us about your understanding of that dynamics and how it plays in with our current crisis.
When we talk of water security, we are talking about availability of safe water for the citizens to use for their personal needs, for production, and for other economic uses. So in this case, we're talking about all these. The different government will first have to identify the needs, the targets of what the government what they really want to address. And this you can't just sit down and identify. This must be backed by research, by studies. It is based on this that you can come up with reasonable plan, can come up with reasonable policy that will impact on the life of the citizens. And in Africa, most times this is what is missing. People are only trying their hands here and there, just trying their hands here and there, but there have not been concerted efforts to ensure that proper plans are made for the benefit of the citizens. Because otherwise, take Nigeria for instance, most states do not have water sector, except if only Abuja and maybe Lagos, some part of Lagos and maybe a few other states have this water corporation whereby they provide water and reclaim water. And it was because of this situation in Africa and other third world countries that made the United Nations revise the MDG and came up with the current SDG. And that is why they have to set the target for the SDG, which deals with water and sanitation. So for any government to meet the needs, to meet these targets, they have to be proper planning, proper research, and also try to see what can be done for the citizens to have safe water, not just having water, but
Mr. Benson,
water that will
all right, let me interject.
the life and health of the citizens.
All right, let me interject based off what you've said in regards to a lack of commitment from government towards improving our water scarcity. So my question is going to be two-pronged. Impress on us, what are the consequences in all ramifications, social, economic consequences of water scarcity? That's on the one hand. And is it possible for us to compel some sort of commitment from government using the scare tactics?
Yes, the effect of poor water is enormous because one, it touches on the life, the health and well-being of the citizens. And it also affects or impacts on the economic well-being of the citizens, including the government, because getting water from a reliable source impact on the health. And if you are not healthy, you can't do anything, you can't go to work, you can't even take care of your family. So it's a whole range of list of impact on the population, and we can see that the concentration of states or locations where they have water services for their citizens is only very minimal. It's only limited. It's only provided for the affluent, those who live in either government reserve area or segregated area for the, if we put it there, if I may put it this way, those big men or those in who can influence things. Otherwise, they don't really have concern for other citizens, and that's why we keep having cholera year in, year out. And last year we had cholera in about 34 states out of the 36. So where government, and cholera is a sign of poverty in any country. So where we go ahead having cholera, so you not think such government are serious with the well-being of their citizens, or committed to the well-being of providing good services to their citizens, because cholera is something that has been forgotten in some countries.
All right, let's bring in Dr. Egbe again, and I want to first off, do you share the same, for a lack of a better word coming to my mind, pessimism of Mr. Benson about government commitment to proper implementation of policies, and how strongly do you feel that, you know, centralizing our policies and making them a little more explicit, so to speak, will help with addressing Africa water resources challenges?
All right, thank you. I think that both of us we are in the same direction. He is, more pessimistic, and you wouldn't blame anyone for being pessimistic, especially in the reality of what we have experienced in the last year. The cholera incident is evident enough on the state of our public health and then our water systems. So we are back to the conversation again, the crux of the matter, where I said, here is an issue of policy. Yes, you need government to be committed. You need government to, the government has to be committed. The government has to be intentional and show seriousness, so that things like cholera that are forgotten in advanced countries shouldn't be, I mean, it was in Lagos State, for example. Lagos State is the economic capital of Africa. we shouldn't be talking about cholera in Lagos State in this century. So it is, I agree with him on that, that government has to be very intentional. And I still maintain that that intentionality is expressed by effective policies. I do not like to be so pessimistic, because whenever the government is committed to doing something, if they are committed to doing something, they will get it done. So I want to reserve a little bit of optimism to say that whatever policies we have existing, we need to strengthen. There is research, there are models, a lot of them sitting down. We don't, a lot of times you don't have to reinvent the wheel. These things have been done in other places. Most times what we need to do is replicate and then adapt along the way as we replicate what is being done in other places. The actions needed to fix water problems have been done in a whole lot of places. We just need to replicate that, and the government has to be intentional, because water is an essential resource. Like he said, it is a right that everyone needs to have access to. So we need that. But it is not just, I'm not talking about water in terms of just the central availability when it comes to drinking water, but I'm also talking about our water systems, because there is so much the government can do per time. In those areas that government cannot get to in due time, what are the steps that we can take to mitigate these things that we've discussed, cholera, other drought, and all this? All of that wholesome situation is something that the government needs to address as a thing of emergency. Thank you.
I'll still stay with you. It seems like it is not a question of whether we have policies and experts to advise. So one would infer logically that the government is aware of the consequences of water scarcity across board in Africa. So if that is the case, where do we now lay this as a sort of lackadaisical attitude towards addressing the issue? And again, to my earlier question to Mr. Benson, is it possible to use the scare tactics to compel action from government?
Yeah, so I think that we need to have this kind of conversations regularly, and because the government listens. Even when they don't when it seems like they're not doing anything about this thing, they listen. They have the data, they have all of this information. You have different government departments that have this information. So yes, it's not even a scare tactics anymore, because when it descends into the issues of public health and the burden of what it will be on our very weak public health system, then the government knows what to do. For example, the issue of the cholera, if I remember correctly, there were warnings. So it means that there is information out there. The government has access to this information. What it needs to do is to be proactive. The government has to be proactive. I remember growing up in Kaduna, most of the, not hydro areas now, most of the areas had pipe-borne water, but it's not the same thing, it's not the same thing today. So, and it is sad to see that we can say that we've had it better. So it means that something has been done in the past. That means the government knows what to do. Why are they not doing better? We don't know. What do we need to do? For experts such as us that you've brought here, we need to continue to have these conversations. You have results, you have negative results, you have the issues of droughts, you have economic indices that show what can go wrong if people do not have the availability. And if we continue like this, then the average person's commitment, the average person's contribution towards our national economy is, it becomes a negative, because they do not have the resources to contribute their own share.
All right, let's go back to Mr. Benson. What are the implications for human rights, particularly the right to clean water and sanitation? This is your forte, sir.
Okay, the implication is that you have a whole lot of citizens consuming contaminated water or water from unreliable sources. you have a lot of citizens falling sick and being admitted to the hospital or being taken to the hospital. You have a lot of parents leaving their jobs to take their kids to the hospital or other relatives to the hospital and paying medical bills. And you even have businesses slowing down as a result of poor health, because about 70% of the health challenges we have stem from poor water and maybe and sanitation. So if you put all this together, and in 2021, the National Bureau of Statistics carried out a study, an annual study commissioned by the Federal Ministry of Water Resources and Sanitation, and came up with the findings that about 62% of Nigerian citizens drink water that are contaminated with E. coli, and E. coli is from human waste, from fecal waste. So if our 62% of Nigerians consume water contaminated with fecal waste, then you now ask what the efforts of the government are. And my colleague Stella, I'm happy she mentioned that in Kaduna they used to have water supply, water related to their home. So you want to ask, what happened to such plan? What happened to such dream? Is it that we're having different governments from the ones we had during that period? I've been to a state where they have water corporation, water works, and they had the mind to pump untreated water rather than spend money to buy chlorine that will have been used for treating the water before they discharge or treat water to the citizens. So you could see that some government officials have made up their mind not to provide any service to the citizens. So a whole lot of things, and having such people in authority, you can't have them come up with any good policy or any good plan or commission any good any good research. Commission any good research.
That's the reason they are employed. We are their employers. So somehow we have to find a way to get things to work. And I will explore that with you on the other half. But before we go on that break, I want to get your thoughts quickly, Dr. Egbe, on the effects on education, particularly for women and girls. An earlier report by World Bank for 2014, I don't know if there is an update on that now, perhaps, talks about Congolese women spending at least a sixth of their lives searching and securing water. What the current situation is, maybe if you have that, you could share with us. But I wanted you to harp on the effects the water crisis is having on education for girls and women.
All right, thank you. I think that there are certain research outputs that we see and we cannot argue, because even around us we see the same thing. And if somebody around us just sits down and collect the same data, the results will not be different. So women are the primary home caregivers in the home. They are the primary homemakers. And so if you go to a typical water collection point in the morning when you go to work, you see young girls, you see women queuing up to get water to the homes, to do the basic house chores and all that. This is manpower. This is time and energy that should have gone to something else. And we hear stories of this happening years ago, and today it is still the same thing. From the most arid parts of the country and even to the wet parts of the country, because like you said during the introduction, it is not that we are not surrounded by water sources, it is that we do not have availability to clean water. And this is where the energy goes to. So you imagine somebody spending 2 hours, 2 hours, getting water in the morning before the person is ready for school. So one, if the person doesn't have access to water in the home, you're already destabilized for the day. This is impacting the economic contribution of women to the home, the education of young girls to schools, especially in areas in poor. And I hate to use that word, poor areas, but really that is what it is, because what other choice do they have?
Okay.
The impact, yeah. So the impact is negative. It's what is Congo is the case study that you have highlighted, but I don't even think that this is restricted to Congo. As Nigerians, we live around this every day.
I think the peculiarity of the Congo is because it's surrounded by water, and
yes.
It's been described as a water source somehow. I'm not sure I'm getting the phraseology correctly, but I guess that's why there's so much attention on the paradox when it comes to availability of clean water. Let's go on a very short break for now. At least let you get a glass of water or something. And then when we come back, we'll be exploring more of, possible ways we can get out of this crisis. And one of them is the potentials in Africa's groundwater irrigation. Do stay with us. For staying with us, we're still looking at water security in Africa. It seems we have a lot of it, but we don't have the one that we can actually use for sustenance. And this second half, we'll be looking more on how we can explore better, improve on accessibility to clean water. I still have Dr. Stella Egbe and Mr. Attah Benson speaking on this subject. I will start now with Mr. Benson. Again, following my team with you on compelling action, so I'm going to try and get you to, maybe use your expert knowledge to. Okay, I'm told the network is impacting my communication with Mr. Benson, so I'll just stay with Dr. Egbe for now. Doctor, I'm going to put you a bit on the spot with this one. It's in the quest for, maybe conversations that can lead to solutions. I stumbled on the World Bank's report titled The Hidden Wealth of Nations, the Economics of Groundwater in Times of Climate Change. I want you to talk to us first about what this groundwater potential has, groundwater irrigation potential really, on improving food security.
All right, so groundwater mainly, I think this is what we refer to as the aquifers. It's everywhere, but the sustainability of groundwater is how it is used and how you manage the ecosystem. One, it is sustained by rainfall. Rainfall refeeds into the earth, and this is the reserve that we have. How we use this, either by ensuring that what is being fed back into the ground is not polluted, is very important, and that is how we can regulate and ensure that it is sustainable and very useful to us. Especially now that we're talking about, you mentioned climate change is one of the overwhelming challenge in the current day. What can we do? How do we explore, especially with how water impacts food security? Irrigation, if you go to one of the easiest ways to see the beauty of irrigation is to go to the arid parts of the country where local technology is being utilized for irrigation farming, and you can see dry season farming, and you can see the productivity that comes from it. But this is not scaled up. This is not at an industrialized scale. We have a lot of land resources that irrigation can be upscaled to levels that can sustain Africa and beyond. And this can be integrated with what we now call nature-based solutions. For example, ensuring that the habitat above ground is maintained in such a way that it's not disrupted. So we don't disrupt our forests, we don't cut down our greenery, because in doing that, you affect the earth's surface, you affect evapotranspiration. And when the earth is so exposed, what you have is heavy rainfalls that now become a problem. Rather than being held in ground, it becomes runoff and flood. So maintaining proper use of our environment, the conservation and preservation of our forests, our green areas, our savannas, ensuring that trees are a part of the ecosystem is one of the major ways that you can maintain the underground reserve that can be useful for us, especially with the impact of climate change that is now contributing to prolonged drought, affecting farms, affecting food productivity. This is one of the major ways that whether at individual level or whether at industrialized level, these are the ways that we can ensure that this wealth that is the underground water reserve that we have access to is conserved, is protected for our use.
All right, let's see if we have Mr. Benson on. Mr. Benson, if you can hear me, can you acknowledge?
Yes, I can hear you. Sorry, the network dropped a bit.
We understand. We're in Nigeria. These things happen. I apologize to our viewers as well. In keeping with my earlier submission that I'm going to push you to, dig into your experience and share with us some insight as to how we can work on this situation. I want you to give some credence to what Dr. Egbe has said. I mean, whatever solutions we're looking for requires some substantial investment on infrastructure. So talk to us about these investments that are needed to improve water infrastructure, maybe including storage, treatment, and distribution.
Okay, thank you again. To talk about investment, I'll start with government ensuring that there's an enabling environment, providing enabling law, and with that, once you have appropriate law backing such service, then you have the appropriate policies. In addition to that, we should not always think the government is a Superman that can provide everything. So any government that thinks that way is just misleading and deceiving her citizens. There should be opportunity for the private sectors to come in, and for private sector to come in and invest in the water sector, there must be enabling law. Such a country must be one that respects the rule of law, because anywhere where there's no rule of law, you not see investors going there to invest. Because again, despite the fact that I'm from the civil society, I don't campaign for free water and sanitation services. If there's need, the citizens are willing and are ready to pay for water services. So if the government creates the enabling environment, private investors are ready to come in and invest and ensure that the citizens have good and reliable and safe water. Another thing I would like to bring in is the government must also ensure that there's a regulatory agency that regulates all the activities around the water provision of the water services. Because whether the government provides water, whether it is through the water corporation or through borehole, if it is not regulated, you see that it becomes all commerce affairs. And in such a situation, you're not having people or investors interested in coming there to invest. So there's need for government to assess her capability and see what services it can lease out to either the private sector or other agency or other partners within the development sector.
Dr. Egbe, I'd like your input on this as well. What sort of investments are we looking at to improve water infrastructure?
Excuse me. Yes, so one of the key areas, and I've mentioned it before, is that for every sort of economic innovation that we're embracing, it must take into account the natural resources that we have around us. So industrialization, infrastructure, they must come with consideration for our wetlands, our forests, and all those natural resources that help to preserve our underground water system. This is one, because nature has put in place these structures to help protect us. If we do not promote sustainability when we are applying our economic innovations, it leads us to where we are. That is some of the reasons why we are suffering what we have today in terms of scarce resources. Is because our economic innovations, our economic activities are not taking into consideration the structures that the natural ecosystem has put in place to help us. And so you have, for example, in the Lake Chad region, they tell you the Lake Chad is shrinking because of climate change. What are we doing in that area? Logging, so I'm coming from the perspective as a conservationist now. All of these economic innovations have prerequisite environmental impact assessments. Do we take into account the mitigation measures that have been put in place in all of these environmental impact assessments? This is one place that we're going to be charging the government. We need to be very intentional about those measures, because at best, humans can only prevent. When it becomes a problem, especially when we have crossed the boundaries of nature, then there is so much that we can do, and then nature would have to take care of itself. So you have flood, you have a drying up of our underground water system. So even if you have all of the beautiful water infrastructure, after all of this destruction is done, it is not beneficial to everyone, because we've altered the state of the natural ecosystem.
All right, your submission made me think about, this situation is not peculiar to one country in Africa, it's continent-wide. So is perhaps considering a way to promote a trans-boundary water cooperation and management something we could explore?
I think that it is not something we should shy away from, because the water scarcity is something that is, like you said, not limited to one country. So what is being done in one country can impact another country. A typical example is where we have flooding, and then we have dams that we've put in place that is supposed to provide us with power. And one country has to control what's going on in its own dam, it releases it, and then there's flooding in another country. So regional approach is needed, even global. And that's why we have treaties, we have all of these meetings, we have all of these reports, and we have countries coming together to have conversations. We can look beyond our borders, especially when what we're doing in one part of the world, it's now glaring that it can impact people in another angle of the globe.
Okay. Mr. Benson, how can communities be engaged in water management decisions? We're still looking at how we can improve on accessibility.
So I think at the early part of the question,
I said, how can communities, local communities, be better engaged in water management decisions?
For the communities to be
yes, to
involved,
be engaged in water management decision and ensuring that, for instance, if government provides, how can this community ensure that the water source is kept safe? I'm talking about community participation in water resources management and decision making.
First is for the government to recognize that the communities have a role to play in the water management system. With that, that will give the community that sense of ownership and sense of belonging to participate in the water management system. And then there should be guidelines provided for the communities on how to manage the water facility or the water system. So with this, the community will now become either the police of themselves, now take decisions for this, because this concerns them and it is their own interest. So they will now do everything possible to ensure that their interest is well protected, and not just their interest and the sustainability of such water facilities. And in addition to that, there is also need for regular education, awareness creation regularly to the citizens, and as well as to the those the service providers or those who are supposed to be providing these water facilities, because it's a two-way thing. Regular education, regular awareness creation, even if they knew it before, it's always good that you remind them and also ensure that they come up with committees or management teams that will ensure proper management of these resources and ensuring the sustainability. In addition to that, it's always also good that other stakeholders are brought in, particularly with regards to the effect or impact of climate change, so that whatever will hinder the sustainability of such services, the citizens and the government concerned will be well informed about it, and there'll be proper mitigation strategy brought in, and for everybody to be aware. With that, it becomes a joint ownership for both the citizens as well as the government, and then we have the sustainability and we have good service and everybody is happy.
Dr. Egbe, explore for us, just, your initial thinking on some of the benefits of integrating water security into national development plans, because I think I had this conversation a couple of years ago about having a national development plan, a template for growing nations. We don't seem to have that explicitly spelled out, but in an El Dorado scenario, give us some of the benefits that we can get from integrating water security.
Yeah, so I think that we would all agree that the government is a very powerful institution. Sometimes government can make impacts just by pronouncement, and really, the clarity on the ownership of water for me is not very clear in Nigeria. It's not something that I'm not very conversant on that ownership. But we know that when it comes to the management and ownership of natural resources, that the government is sort of the alpha and the omega. And so even where other stakeholders from local communities or individuals carry out various interventions, for example, a lot of people have boreholes in their home or in their homes, or you go to communities and then there are community boreholes, solar-powered boreholes. You realize that there is so much that can do when it comes to sustaining our water resources. And so we cannot overemphasize the need for the government to have a developmental plan when it comes to water, because what this would do is that it will regulate the activities that impact what we have in terms of water resources. Is going to regulate the activities that are carried out, because when we're talking about this, it's not just the accessibility, because I'm speaking to the wholesome situation, both the accessibility of drinking water, our underground water systems, water bodies, all of this. You have different things here and there. You have different agencies here and there regulating this and that. But we need to get a wholesome picture. We need a working template that guides and regulates how we utilize and how we protect our water systems so that it can be useful. So yes, I believe that when the government is intentional, even with just a pronouncement, it can make an impact on the state of our water resources.
I'm
And
totally with you on
if
that.
properly done, it will be for the benefit of everyone. Thank you.
Doctor, I totally agree with you on that. All we just need in this our El Dorado scenario is for governments to actually want to do the right thing. We're wrapping up now, so I'll start with Mr. Benson. Your final thoughts on improving water security in Africa and addressing the crisis we currently face.
For the government to address the issue of water security in Africa is for the government to take the bull by the horn, be at the driving seat. First, identify this as a major challenge facing the citizens and coming up with research, because you can't come up with any good plan without research. And from your research, it will come up with a whole lot of scenario, and that will guide whatever plan you are going to put in place. And not only that, with that, whatever plan the government wants to put in place should be backed by law, and the government should respect the law. In addition to that, the government must have a regulatory system, whether it's on surface
Mr. Benson,
water
I'm told
or a borehole or whatever. So the government must have a regulatory system to regulate whatever usage water will be put into, either for industrial purpose, for domestic purpose, and whatever.
All right, Mr. Benson, I'm told we're out of time, but I mean, it's imperative Dr. Egbe gets at least 30 seconds for concluding thoughts, please.
All right, thank you very much. I'll say while we wait for the government to take those intentional steps that we've talked about, and within our own local situation, we should look at natural or nature-based solutions that are inexpensive, that would help us to stay healthier, because we do not want to become part of the statistics. Thank you very much.
A very big thank you to both of you for speaking with us. We appreciate your time.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for having us. Thank you.